Sergeant Elena Morales stepped off the transport bus at Fort Beacon with her duffel slung over one shoulder, boots worn from desert sand and mountain rock. Her uniform was neat, pressed, and decorated. 2 rows of commendations sat above her. Heart, including the Silver Star, the Army Commendation Medal, and a Combat Action Badge. Yet, as she marched toward the barracks, she could feel the tension in the air like static. The way the younger soldiers looked at her, a mixture of awe and confusion. The way the senior ones simply stared, tight-lipped. She was used to this, the looks, the assumptions. This wasn't her first posting. But Fort Beacon was different. It was old school, steeped in tradition, and known for its rigid structure. Elena had read about it on the way over. She wasn't surprised to be one of only a handful of female combat veterans stationed here. She passed by a formation of fresh recruits doing push-ups in the grass. One of them turned his head to glance her way, a mistake. His drill sergeant noticed and barked, "Eyes front, private. You ain't never seen a woman wear a uniform before?" The recruits laughed, but Elena didn't break stride. At the admin building, she was met by a young lieutenant, crisp and polished, barely out of OCS. He looked her up and down, clearly searching for something to criticize, then finally said, "Sergeant Morales, welcome. You'll be staying in Barrack C, top floor. Report to Drill Yard B at 0600, but there's a small matter we need to address." She raised an eyebrow. "Sir, your tattoo?" he said, glancing down at a clipboard. "There's been a report of unauthorized body art visible through the uniform. We'll need to document it and escalate it to command." Elena's face didn't change, but inside, something shifted. She hadn't even taken her blouse off, and already someone had gone looking. The tattoo on her back wasn't visible unless she removed her shirt completely, and even then only from behind. Someone had clearly been talking. "I wasn't aware it violated regulations, sir," she said, her voice neutral. "Well, technically it does. Anything above the collar line or below the sleeves is fine. Yours may be considered excessive. We'll need to evaluate it. Inspection is scheduled for tomorrow, 0800. You'll need to report without outer gear." She nodded slowly. Understood. As she walked out of the office, she didn't let the emotion rise. Not yet. Fort Beacon wasn't going to break her. Not like this. Back in the barracks, she met her new bunkmates, mostly younger soldiers. A few recent transfers, they gave her space but not warmth. One, a corporal named Jenkins, leaned against the doorframe as she unpacked. "Just gonna say it," he muttered. "This place? Not friendly to difference. You already got eyes on you." "I noticed," she said. "They don't care what medals you've earned. You mess with their image, their rules. Even if you're right, they'll eat you alive." Elena zipped her duffel shut and turned to face him. "Let them look. I've been through worse." Jenkins stared at her a second longer, then nodded once, and walked off. That night, alone on her bunk, she lay flat on her stomach, staring at the bottom of the top bunk above her. The tattoo stretched across her back, silent and unseen beneath her shirt, a pair of angel wings, wide and graceful, curling around 4 names inked in black. Names of the soldiers she'd lost, brothers in arms. Her family dot she hadn't gotten, the tattoo to impress anyone. She'd gotten it so their names would never be forgotten. She bore them across her skin like a battle flag, but Fort Beacon didn't care about stories. It cared about rules. And in the morning, they'd ask her to strip it all away. She closed her eyes and whispered each of the 4 names like a prayer. Asterisk, the morning air was sharp and cold, a sharp contrast to the tension brewing inside Elena. The sky was still dark when she arrived at the drill yard for 0600. Her boots hit the gravel in rhythm, her spine perfectly straight, her mind already preparing. For the inspection later that morning, during drills, the younger soldiers kept sneaking glances at her. One of them whispered, not low enough, "That's her, the one with the back tattoo." She didn't react. She'd learned long ago that silence had power. Let them talk. The battlefield taught her which opinions mattered and which didn't. After formation, Lieutenant Grayson approached her again, clipboard in hand. Same fake polished smile. "Sergeant Morales," he began, voice clipped. Just a reminder, your uniform top will need to be removed at 0800 sharp in the inspection bay. You'll be evaluated per regulation 670-1. Bring your documentation if you have any exceptions noted from previous commands. I was cleared. At Fort Harlan, sir, she replied coolly. Well, Fort Beacon has its own interpretation of standards. We maintain stricter discipline here, his smile tightened. Better safe than reassigned, right? There was something smug behind his words. Elena had seen that look before from men who wanted control, not understanding. She didn't blink. Yes, sir. Back at the barracks, she sat down on her bunk, slowly unbuttoning her blouse and laying it across her lap. Her squad mates filtered in and out, giving her space. Only Jenkins stayed nearby, leaning on the frame of his bed, arms crossed. You serious about this inspection? He asked. Elena glanced at him. Don't have a choice. They're trying to rattle you. I've seen this game before. They pick someone different, new, decorated, female, and test her. See if she cracks or fights back. What would you do? She asked, genuinely curious. I'd cover it up, say it's private. Get a doctor to sign off, whatever. But you? He hesitated. You look like someone who doesn't flinch. She didn't respond, but a shadow of a smile tugged at her lips. The tattoo itself had been done during her transition back home, weeks after returning from Kandahar. It took 5 sessions, each more painful than the last. Not because of the ink, but because of the memories that surfaced each time. The names Carter, Lynn, Riley, Thompson curved like a silent monument across her back. Beneath the arch of the angel's wings, each one had saved her in some way. Carter covered her when their convoy was ambushed. Lynn dragged her out from under rubble. Riley never made it home. He died humming a country song. Bleeding out in the sand, she wore their names because she couldn't wear their dog tags anymore. 800 came too fast. In the inspection bay. The room was cold and tiled. A stainless steel table sat in the center. 2 officers, 1 male and 1 female, stood waiting. A staff sergeant with a clipboard tapped his pen. State your name and rank. Sergeant Elena Morales. The command directive, remove your uniform blouse. Without hesitation, Elena slid her arms out of the sleeves and stood tall in her regulation undershirt. Then she turned slowly and pulled it up, revealing her back. The room went silent. The wings stretched from shoulder to shoulder, elegant and fierce, shadowed in black and gray. The names carved in smooth cursive followed the curve of her spine like a column of honor. The female officer's eyes softened. The male one stared. Finally, the staff sergeant cleared his throat. This exceeds surface area limits under AR 670-1. It must be reviewed by the base commander for further disciplinary action or exemption. Elena lowered her shirt calmly. Understood. As she left, she felt their eyes still on her. Not out of judgment now, but because of something deeper. Her battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. Elena sat alone in the empty barracks lounge that evening, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and staring at the muted TV. The inspection replayed in her mind. Again and again, not the act of lifting her shirt, but the silence that followed. That silence wasn't judgment, it was something else. Recognition. Maybe even respect. She had nothing to be ashamed of. Still, the thought of being judged for honoring the dead, especially by people who had never heard a single bullet, burned deeper than the tattoo ever did. For Beacon claimed to value sacrifice. But sacrifice had a dress code now. Her fingers traced the rim of the coffee mug as her memory drifted back to Kandahar. It had been hot, hotter than any hell she'd ever imagined. The mission was routine at first. Recon with local forces, check. For weapons caches, extract by 1400. But that plan evaporated. When an IED took out the lead Humvee, she'd been in the 3rd vehicle. The shockwave flipped them sideways. Smoke, screaming. Carter was already dead by the time she reached him. Lynn dragged her by the collar to cover while RPGs exploded nearby. Riley, always cracking jokes, was the one who ran back for their unconscious driver. He caught a round to the chest before he even got there. And Thompson, sweet, slow-talking Thompson, covered them all with a mounted M240. Screaming for air support that came too late, Elena had carried Riley's body to the LZ herself. He bled through her uniform and onto her skin. She didn't cry until days later, back in her bunk, alone in a medical tent. The tattoo came months after. She hadn't planned it. One day, while walking through Dallas on a medical leave weekend, she passed a tattoo parlor with a sign that read, "What hurts? Ink it down." Something clicked. She walked in, stripped off her jacket, and asked the artist if he could design angel wings. Around 4 names. It took hours, days, pain that didn't compare to what she'd already lived through. She didn't tell anyone. Not her CO, not her squad. It wasn't about show. It was a private monument. A prayer carved in flesh. But now, Fort Beacon wanted to call it a violation. A problem. An image too bold for their walls. That night, Jenkins knocked softly before stepping into the lounge. "You all right?" She didn't answer right away. Then, just remembering. He sat across from her. "They escalated it. You're on tomorrow's commander docket." She nodded. "I figured." He paused. "Some of the others? They saw the tattoo? Words going around? No one's laughing anymore?" Elena looked up. "Good? They should have seen it before they judged you," Jenkins added. "Hell, we all should have," she offered a faint smile. "That's not why I wear it. I wear it so I never forget, so I carry them with me." "Always." There was a silence between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally, Jenkins said, "Base commander." Nash. His old school, by the book, doesn't bend easy. "I don't need him to bend," she replied. "I just need him to understand." Jenkins studied her a moment. "He served in the Gulf, lost people too. Maybe you'll speak a language." He remembers. Elena finished her coffee, stood up, and squared her shoulders. "Then I guess I'll speak it loud." The next morning, she would face the man who could end her career. But she wasn't afraid. The uniform they asked her to remove wasn't just fabric. It was memory, pain, brotherhood. And her tattoo? That wasn't rebellion. It was reverence. Asterisk. The commander's wing was eerily quiet. Elena stood at parade rest. In the hallway, her heart steady but alert. A soldier didn't earn medals by flinching, and she wasn't about to start. Still, she knew the weight of what was coming. Commander Nash had a reputation, unmoving, unsmiling, unbreakable. Soldiers said he could recite uniform code in his sleep and didn't believe in exceptions, especially not for tattoos. The clock struck 0800. A sergeant opened the door and gave a curt nod. "You're up, Sergeant Morales." She stepped in. The room was large but plain, a desk, 2 flags. A wall lined with commendations, all Nash's. He sat behind the desk, lean and stone-faced, hands folded. He didn't gesture for her to sit. "Sergeant Morales," he said, his voice gravel and steel. "You're aware of why you're here?" "Yes, sir." "You've been reported for excessive back tattooing, potentially in violation of AR 670-1. Your file was reviewed. Extensive commendations." He paused, eyes skimming her ribbons. "Silver Star, Afghanistan, Operation Long Dust." "Yes, sir. I also received testimony from your last CO. He claimed you were granted latitude under special circumstances." "I didn't ask for it, sir, but he understood the meaning." Nash's brow twitched, just barely. "Well, let's see what caused all this fuss." Elena didn't hesitate. She unbuttoned her blouse with deliberate precision and turned around. She reached back, lifted the undershirt, and exposed the ink. Silence. The room felt like it held its breath. The wings, etched in sharp grayscale, stretched across her shoulders like a guardian's embrace. Beneath them curved 4 names, simple and unadorned: Carter, Lynn, Riley, Thompson. The lines were bold, clean, full of weight. Nash rose slowly. He stepped around his desk, surprisingly light on his feet. Elena didn't move when he reached her. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, in a quieter voice, he said, "Riley?" She turned her head slightly. "Yes, sir." "Thomas Riley." He stared at the name. "My godson," Elena blinked. For the first time, her military calm wavered. "I didn't know, sir. He wrote to me from Kandahar. Said he was working with a sergeant tougher than any man I've met. Always joked about how you never smiled. Elena gave the smallest grin. He said the same about you. That cracked something. Nash let out a small, bitter laugh. He stepped back and motioned for her to cover up. She did. He returned to his desk, sat down slowly, and folded his hands. Tell me how it happened. And so she did. Everything, the ambush, the fire, Riley's last moments, how she carried his body across the LZ, how his blood had soaked her shirt, and how she couldn't get his laugh out of her head for weeks. When she finished, the room was silent again. Nash didn't speak for nearly a minute. Finally, he said, regulations exist for order, but memory exists for purpose. Yes, sir, he nodded. You're dismissed, Sergeant. She blinked, unsure. Sir? I'm not punishing someone for remembering the fallen, he said, voice tight. You honored him better than most of us ever could. Get back to duty. Elena stood at attention, saluted, and turned to leave. Sergeant Morales, he called. As she reached the door, she turned. Don't let them shame you for carrying ghosts. Some ghosts deserve to be carried. She nodded, sharp and sure, and stepped out of the office with a heart that beat a little louder. She didn't win a fight. Today, she reminded a man why he ever put on the uniform. Word traveled fast in Fort Beacon, faster than orders, faster than rumors, faster than reason. By lunch, the whisper had reached the mess hall. Sergeant Morales stood in front of Colonel Nash, showed him the tattoo, and walked out without a mark on her record. To some, it was a miracle. To others, a mystery. But for Elena, it was a weight lifted, though not entirely gone. She sat at the corner table with her tray untouched, boots crossed beneath her chair, posture as crisp as ever. Jenkins slid into the seat across from her, whistling low. So, he said, leaning in, you broke the Nash wall? She shook her head. I didn't break anything. I just reminded him. He raised an eyebrow. Of what? That Riley wasn't just a name on my back. He was his godson. Jenkins blinked. No kidding. No kidding, she said, her voice quieter now. The tattoo, it brought it all back for him. He remembered what this place is supposed to be about. Jenkins leaned back. Well, whatever you did, it worked. People are talking. But this time not in whispers. That afternoon, Elena reported to her new assignment, not at the barracks, not with drills. She was ordered to the East Wing offices near the chapel, where Colonel Nash himself met her with a rare, almost human look on his face. I've been thinking, he said as they walked down the hallway together. We have plenty of instructors who teach weapons, tactics, strategy, but what we don't have is someone who teaches how to come back from war. Elena looked over. Sir? I want you to help me set up a resilience and memory division. Small, just a few people at first. You'd help train soldiers to deal with trauma, grief, and guilt. God knows they'll need it. Elena paused in the middle of the hallway. Why me? He stopped too. Because you carried 4 ghosts into this base and turned them into a lesson. You didn't do it for attention. That makes you exactly the right person. The idea felt strange in her chest, warm like purpose. She had spent years surviving war, then surviving its shadow. Maybe now it was time to help others walk out of it, too. I'll do it, she said. But only if I can tell their stories. Sergeant, Nash said, you tell them however you damn well please. By evening, the command memo had gone out. Sergeant Elena Morales, decorated combat veteran, was appointed head of a new initiative, the Resilience Unit, with the mission of honoring fallen comrades through service, storytelling, and training. The effect was instant. Young soldiers started nodding respectfully when she walked by. The scorn disappeared. Instead, there was curiosity and something closer to reverence. Her tattoo, once whispered about in mockery, became something else entirely. One soldier even asked her nervously, Ma'am, was it real? Did you really carry him all the way back? She paused, then nodded. Yes, I did. The soldier looked down. I think my uncle was on that mission. Elena placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Then you should come to our first session. That night she returned to her barracks, exhausted but full in a way she hadn't felt in years. She rolled her shoulders, stretched, and sat on the edge of her bed. For the first time since she'd arrived, She didn't feel like a guest, she felt like a soldier again. Not because of her rank, but because she'd been given permission, not to fight another battle, but to help others heal from the last one. Asterisk, the next morning, Elena stood in a modest, empty room on the second floor of the East Wing. Clipboard in hand, the walls were blank, the floors scuffed, but the sunlight streaming through the high windows made it feel less like an office and more like a chapel. Appropriate, she thought. This was sacred ground now. By noon, a folding table had been set up, a whiteboard hung, and 5 metal chairs formed a circle. No ranks, no titles. Just seats. At 1300, the first 3 soldiers arrived, Private Monroe, quiet and twitchy, Corporal Bailey, eyes distant with that 1,000-yard stare, and Sergeant Luis Diaz, who had once served in the same battalion as Riley. They didn't speak at first. Just sat. Then Elena stepped forward, calm and sure. I'm not here to lecture. She began. I'm here because I've seen things I couldn't unsee. I've done things I still dream about. And I carry 4 names on my back because I couldn't carry them home. No one moved. But all 3 sets of eyes slowly lifted. She continued. This room is not for shame, it's for memory. You don't have to speak today or ever. But if you want to remember someone who didn't make it back, this is the place. Bailey finally spoke. What if I don't want to remember? Then don't, Elena said gently. But I think you already do. He looked down. She didn't press. The first session ended in silence. But none of them left early. Word spread again, this time without whispers. Nash attended the second session, unannounced, sitting in the corner without a word. He watched as Elena led 10 soldiers through breathing drills, then asked if anyone wanted to share a name. 3 did. 1 cried. No one laughed. Later that evening, Nash found her in the hallway. You're doing something good here, he said. Elena wiped her face with a towel, her t-shirt damp from stress more than sweat. I just listen, that's all they need sometimes. He hesitated, then added, there's something I want to show you. He led her to his office. From a drawer in his desk, he pulled out an old folded photo, worn, its corners curled. It was of a young man, arms slung around 2 others in desert fatigues. One of them was unmistakably Riley. I took this the day before they deployed, Nash said. They were kids. Elena studied the photo in silence. He talked about this picture. Said you were the one who taught him how to fix a truck before his first car broke down. Nash chuckled quietly. He was the only one who could make me laugh during inspections. They stood together, both haunted in their own way. But now, for the first time, not alone in it, before she left, Nash spoke again. We're going to commission a mural. She turned, surprised. Of what? Your tattoo, the wings. And the names painted in the mess hall. Elena froze. Sir, that's non-negotiable, Nash interrupted. You brought them here. They should stay. She swallowed. Hard. For a long time, she couldn't find words. Finally, she said, thank you. The mural was approved within the week. A local veteran-turned-artist was brought in. Elena worked with him closely, guiding every line. Every feather, every name. Soon, soldiers stopped by during breaks just to see it. Some saluted. Some just stared, but all of them, somehow, stood a little straighter after. The mural was finished on a cloudy Tuesday morning. Soldiers gathered in silence as the cloth cover was lifted from the mess hall's far wall. Gasps were audible. Even those who had expected something powerful weren't prepared for what they saw. Wings stretched across the stone, not just painted, but alive, each feather etched with texture and shadow. 4 names were inscribed in black across the center, cradled between the wings as if protected by something divine. Carter. Lynn, Riley, Thompson. Above it, in capital letters, the artist had written, those who stood still stand. No ranks were listed, no medals. Just names. Elena stood off to the side during the unveiling, her uniform crisp, hands folded behind her. She didn't want attention. She only wanted memory, but that morning, even those who hadn't known her story began to understand. Recruits stopped mid-bite at lunch to walk over and stare. Officers nodded. One sergeant, burly and usually blunt, stood still for a full 10 minutes. Before saluting the wall and walking out without a word, Jenkins found her later that day in the resilience room, unpacking folding chairs for the next session. "I heard what Private Monroe said after seeing the mural," he told her. Elena looked up. "What did he say?" "He said, 'For the first time, I don't feel crazy.'" She paused, surprised. "Then, good, that's the point." Word about the resilience unit reached even beyond the base. A reporter from a regional military magazine requested an interview. Nash personally declined it. "Let the story stay sacred," he said. "Not everything belongs in headlines." But the internal newsletter ran a feature titled, "One Room, 4 Names, 100 Wounds Healing." Elena didn't read it. She didn't need to. Every day after, more soldiers came to her sessions. Some just listened. Others shared names, memories, regrets. One woman left behind a small bracelet, saying it belonged to her best friend, killed by friendly fire. Elena placed it in a glass jar by the door, and soon the jar began to fill with small tokens, dog tags, patches, photos folded tight. It became a shrine. Not to death, but to remembering. By late October, Nash called her into his office again. "This thing you've built," he said, "it's not temporary." She nodded. "I never thought it was." He slid a document across his desk. "I'm authorizing a permanent resilience division. You'll lead it, with the authority to replicate it across other training centers." Elena stared at the paperwork. "This is big." Nash folded his arms. "You didn't just change policy, Morales, you changed the culture. You made it okay for soldiers to grieve." She signed the paper without hesitation. The next week, she was promoted to staff sergeant. There was no ceremony. Just a quiet handshake from Nash and a fresh insignia placed on her desk, waiting. That night, as she walked across the parade field under the stars, she saw a small group of new recruits gathered in front of the mural. One of them had tears in his eyes. Another whispered, "You think she really carried him back? Like in combat?" "She did," one of the others replied. "Jenkins said so." Elena didn't say a word. She just walked past them, letting the shadows hide her quiet smile. She had once been asked to take off her uniform. Now that same uniform was reshaping the base around her. Not through defiance, not through anger, but through the simple act of remembering what and who made it all matter. Years passed, seasons changed over Fort Beacon like clockwork, training rotations, deployments, arrivals, departures. But one thing never changed. The mural in the mess hall, the paint never faded. Soldiers kept it clean. Some left coins beneath the names. Some whispered stories to it. Some just stood there, hands behind their backs, letting silence do the talking. By then, Elena Morales had become more than a name on a duty roster. She was a presence. A quiet, steady force on base, always moving, always listening, always showing up for the ones who weren't sure how to carry what they'd brought back. As staff sergeant, she led weekly resilience sessions in a space that had doubled in size. A second team was already preparing to open a branch at Fort Wallace in Kentucky. Another was planned for Pendleton. Yet, no matter how far the program spread, Elena stayed rooted at Fort Beacon. She didn't want glory. She wanted truth. On the anniversary of the Kandahar mission, the base held its first official memory assembly. Not a memorial, not a parade. Something different. Something quieter. Hundreds of soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder in the field at dawn. No speeches, no music. Just 4 names read aloud, followed by a long, intentional silence. Elena stood off to the side as always, her uniform perfect. Her eyes glassy but dry. Later that day, a young private approached her outside the barracks. Nervous. "Ma'am," he said, "can I ask, did you really carry him?" "Riley?" She studied him. He was young, maybe 19. He had that look, part awe, part fear, part hunger for something solid to believe in. "Yes," she said simply. "I carried him." He paused, nodding. "They said you didn't even cry." "I waited," she replied. "Sometimes the tears come later, but the weight never leaves." The private glanced down. "My brother served. He didn't come home. I think he would have liked you." Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then he would have been welcome in our circle." That night, she returned to the mural. Alone this time. She stood beneath the painted wings and let her hand rest on one of the names, Riley. "Still watching, aren't you?" she whispered, "still laughing at me from wherever you are." She smiled faintly, then stepped back and sat on the bench someone had quietly placed in front of the wall months earlier. The plaque on the bench read, "Dedicated to SSG Elena Morales, who carried them home." She hadn't asked for it. She hadn't even known it was coming. She ran her fingers over the engraving and leaned back. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to close her eyes. Not from exhaustion, but peace. And in that moment, she felt them. Not in ghostly ways, not in dreams, just presence. Carter's sarcastic laugh, Lynn's steady footsteps. Thompson humming, Riley always humming. They hadn't been forgotten. Not in her bones, not in her skin, not on this base. She had been told to take off the uniform once, but in choosing to wear it anyway, and in carrying what mattered most, she hadn't just rewritten her orders. She had redefined what strength looked like. And now, long after her last session was done, long after her boots no longer echoed down the halls, her story would remain. Not on paper, but in names. In wings. And, in every soldier who stood a little taller after seeing what remembrance really meant. The end asterisk.